Hello, friends. This is David Lee Khim, and you're listening to The Long Game. Today's guest is someone whose path into SEO was anything but conventional. Erik Episcopo landed his first SEO job through a Craigslist ad while living in Taiwan. That role had him working on Resume Genius, which was a resume builder product, where he got to dive deep into content and SEO. He was writing about resumes for every profession you can think of and pitching the press under pseudonyms, which got him placed on major publications like the New York Times. Fast forward to today, and Erik is leading SEO at Wiz, one of the fastest growing cloud security companies in the world, recently acquired by Google. At Wiz, he's moved fast, scaled content programs from scratch, and is now experimenting with everything from programmatic SEO to LLM visibility strategies and AI-assisted workflows. In this episode, we talk about what makes a modern super IC, a super individual contributor. Erik talks about how he hires and filters for real AI understanding in candidates, what most resumes get wrong, and what he's learned going from scrappy link building to enterprise growth strategy. Whether you're an early career SEO, a head of marketing navigating AI shifts, or someone just figuring out how to stay sharp in a changing industry, this episode's for you. All right, Erik, welcome to the show. It's great to finally have you. I know we had a little bit of a back and forth to scheduling, but we're making it happen.
No worries. I'm honored to be on. This is my first ever podcast, so apologies to your listeners in advance if this becomes the worst long game podcast episode.
the preempting apology already.
Yes.
Well, I have a feeling you won't need to apologize, but I'm honored to be the first podcast to host you. Really excited for some of the things that we have on the docket today. We'll talk about SEO, AI, hiring, and maybe resume optimization as well. I'm excited to dig into your background a little bit, but maybe a good place to start is you're currently working at Wiz as an SEO manager. Wiz has been in the news a lot with the recent acquisition by Google. So we'd love to hear about what are you up to at Wiz? What's going on?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's funny about the acquisition news. Like when you get acquired, obviously there's all this excitement, or everything is going to change now. But of course, you quickly realize oh wait, nothing changes because the deal may take 2 years to actually close, and we're still Wiz, and now it's back to heads down and just business as usual. But still, it's great to get that recognition, and of course, exciting at the prospect of possibly moving into Google. But it's been a whirlwind. I think just about 2 years so far at Wiz. The company still acts like a startup, even though it's grown immensely over the past 4 years it's been in business. But for SEO, I crammed everything I did at a previous cybersecurity company, CrowdStrike, the 4 years that I was there, into these 2 years. And we were just kind of moving at warp speed. I think we had the content engine running up in the first 2 or 3 weeks that I joined Wiz. But yeah, as far as things that we're working on here now, after setting kind of the foundation these past few years, would be more product-led sort of programmatic content, as well as just really doubling down on content that is bringing value to our ICPs.
Got it. And you mentioned in passing there that you were at CrowdStrike, which to my understanding is a competitor of Wiz. Wasn't there a non-compete? I don't know how enforceable those are, but how did you swing that transition?
That's a great question, because when Wiz reached out to me, that was my number one concern. Is oh yeah, this NDA clause that I signed, and I ended up talking to a lawyer just to double check. It's am I safe to do this? And, review the NDA, and even talk to past CrowdStrike employees that moved over to Wiz. And yeah, obviously I went to Wiz, so I ended up being safe. But then I think, a few weeks after I moved to Wiz, I think there was an announcement that in California, or like across the United States, that like these non-competes are like not as enforceable anymore. So yeah, was in the clear.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it sounds like Wiz reached out to you, or it sounds like they poached a couple folks from CrowdStrike.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, there's definitely some past CrowdStrikers here, but yeah, my current manager now reached out to me. I was like, hey, let's do some SEO at Wiz. You want to try to out compete yourself and what you've done at CrowdStrike, and that was that was probably the most enticing thing for me. It was like, yeah, can I beat my personal best? Can I outdo what I did, and can I do it quicker? Mm-hmm. And so far, I'd say, yeah, I've been pretty successful at that.
Yeah, and right before we started recording, you were saying that you're currently in a hiring process for your team as well. Not sure what your pipeline looks like. This episode is probably going to go live in a week from today. So fingers crossed you'll place a candidate by then. But if not, for the folks listening who might be interested, maybe this is a chance for you to plug the role a little bit and perhaps provide some tips for standing out. And worst case, it's some tips for folks who are looking for jobs right now.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, to listeners, we've already locked in our new hire, so we're excited about that. It took longer than I had expected, but tons of candidates, because I think we put the role out the same week the Google news came, so it was like 1,000 applications within the first 2 days or something like that. Like, wow, there's a lot to sift through. But as far as like tips from what I've seen in this past round of hiring, I think the number one thing that stuck out to me of the candidates I talked to is like about 75% did not have what I felt like was a solid answer to, your AI question. And normally I'm just asking, well, one, how are you thinking about the impact of AI, of course, on SEO? And two, what kind of experiments, big or small, have you been doing to kind of test the limits of AI? And again, just so few people had real use cases of tests. And others, I got a few answers of like, well, I don't really believe in AI. It's not there yet in terms of, content generation or whatnot. And well, I can understand their skepticism. It's like the wave is coming, and you've got to find some way to ride it there. So that was the one thing that stuck out to me, is like, with all this talk, especially if you're on LinkedIn, and like, oh, AI use cases, it still seems that most of the industry is not actually experimenting that much with what AI can do in SEO. So that to me was like, that really stuck out. I don't know if you've seen the same thing in candidates that you've talked to, but
it has been similar. I don't think I'm seeing as many candidates as you, only because like one of our directors is the one doing the initial screening. But even once they get to the stage where I interview them, there honestly isn't much substance there either. And we've heard things range from, I don't think it's going to be much different from SEO, so I'm not thinking about it much, which I do think there's some substance to that, but at least provide the nuances for where you think it's different and like how it might evolve, or at least the zeitgeist is sort of changing. I'm curious for you, because when we talk about AI and SEO, there's kind of two angles you can come at it with. One is, how does SEO change the way we do work in general? And then how's AI impacting search behavior and like these different search platforms? So are you looking for both, or is there one that you lean more heavily into, or you expect some substance or thoughts on?
Yeah, I think we're looking for both. Like, one, I want to know, are you keeping up with the industry knowledge, especially the past 3 months of the reports that have come out about LLM visibility? I think Kevin Indig has had some really good ones recently. But yeah, so that question is really to test, like, how are you thinking about it? Have you seen it, like, firsthand experience yourself? And if not, at least show me that you are keeping up with what the data out there in the industry is telling us. So yeah, I'm looking at that part. But then also, whether you believe like, all right, SEO is the same as AEO and you just do the same things, sure, but there's still the other area of AI helping, your SEO workflows and use cases and speeding up the work that you're already doing. So I'm at least looking for an answer to that, of like, where are you trying to find, the even if it's small little areas of efficiency gains using AI.
Yeah. Well, congrats. I don't know if the person who you hired is going to listen to this, but congrats to them. Congrats to you for finding that diamond in the rough.
Thank you.
What was it about that person that stood out? I'm curious, like, what was the response to that question, or in general, what made them the person you wanted to hire?
Yeah. I mean, this person, what stood out to them was like, one, just the amount of like the volume, the workload they were doing just amazed me. They were talking about 250 posts a month. They had a really tight, I think it was like 30, 60, 90 day look back cadence to do kind of like your traditional SEO refresh sequences. Also doing localization and then managing 10 agencies across those like different pillars of work. So that really stood out to me. And then as far as the AI piece of it, they had been experimenting. I mean, well, one, they were upfront about, hey, the AIOs have impacted our clicks, because I asked them, well, you pop your website into SEMrush, like what's going on here? Can you at least explain the dip? And she had a good answer and was upfront about, hey, we've seen that the AIOs have impacted our traffic massively, and here's X, Y, and Z of how we're trying to address that. And then also had the other side of the question where it's like, where are we using AI in our use cases? And I think in this case, they were using it for content optimization or content promotion in terms of like writing copy across. I mean, again, they're doing 250 posts a month. So if you want to promote a new gated asset or new offer across your library of content, that's another great use case of AI, of like writing really unique CTAs per page at scale. So yeah, just a few things of where this person stood out to us.
Dude, that sounds like an amazing hire.
Oh, we're excited.
Me and my co-founders, we talk a lot about super ICs. It sounds like this person is going to be an individual contributor, not a management level. And I got the naming from Claire Vaux from Launch Darkly. And it's just this idea of, hey, this next chapter of how not just marketers or developers or anything, but everyone, how we all work, everyone has the capacity to be a super IC. So AI-enabled workflows, using these tools and being very creative, not saying, hey, I can't do this because we need to hire this person. It's like, well, you can probably do something that's, not the best, but 70% there with AI and remove that bottleneck almost completely. So it's interesting to hear the profile of this person that you just brought on, because it sounds exactly like that type of person that you'd want, who just runs through walls and gets stuff done.
Yeah. And now, this is the first time I've heard the term, but it feels like that is definitely like what Wiz looks for, especially on the marketing team. It feels like we're all these super ICs that just really know our channel area well. And like you said, no matter what, we're going to find a way to break through whatever wall that we hit, and do it at scale and quickly.
Yeah. And I did want to zoom out a little bit. So you were at CrowdStrike and in Wiz, so spent a couple of years in cloud security. And I did some research and saw that before that you were at this company called Taroko Software. So
yes,
I had never heard of it before, but it was really interesting. So I did dig into it a little bit more. But could you tell the listeners a little bit about what was Taroko Software? What were you working on there?
Yeah, Taroko Software, and it still is this, I would say, like this startup incubator of different kind of business ideas, if you will. They really started with ResumeGenius.com. Well, even before that was ResumeCompanion.com that got hit by Penguin and Panda, but that's a different story. But they started in the resume space where we had like a resume generator, and then eventually built out to like privacy policies, legal templates, went into like freelance writing, wedding dresses. We had weddingdresses.com for a short period of time, which was kind of exciting. Wow. Yeah. But yeah, it was just, whatever business idea that the founder thought could be backed by SEO. Like I wouldn't say we had a proper marketing team at first. It was really just scrappy SEOs and what kind of keywords can we rank for quickly and well and drive into whatever app our founder was interested in creating.
Yeah, and you said one of the things you worked on was like the resume generator business, right? So
yes,
that's very far from cloud security. So it sounds like you had a lot of experience on a consumer side too. So like, what were some memorable projects that you worked on?
Man, so I started in the resume space, like, and this is, I think, a tip just for like any SEO, is really just kind of enveloping yourself in the subject matter. So we were really good about getting CPRW certified, like resume writer certified, and then really becoming an expert on resumes, and then writing. I must have written hundreds of resumes because we were going after keywords like accountant resume sample, truck driver resume sample, and I was writing resume samples as a nurse. And this was before. Now I wish we had AI because God, it would have been so much easier. This was me like researching what does a truck driver do, and
you were writing all of those yourself.
Yes, hundreds upon hundreds of these crazy whatever job or career had the highest keyword volume. We were going for it. So that was the beginning of my days in SEO, along with like the link building aspect, which in those days I would say is like the height of the guest post. So, site search, web search, guest post submissions, crawling all of those and submitting tons of guest posts. And then in the guest posting area, like one of the highlights, I don't know if there's a highlight now because it seems a little bit sketch, but to get guest posts, right, we did the whole Harrow thing. But it's sometimes in order to get like the juicier links, you had to put on a persona. So for instance, sometimes I would write as Taylor Johnson, business plan expert for our business plan website. And, responding, I think I got one Harrow from the New York Times, which was about like, awkward conversations. And I remember my uncle telling me about an awkward conversation he had about a coworker that smelled, and being able to tell this coworker, the hard truth and doing it like respectfully. So I kind of just, assumed that role, took that story, presented it there, and got quoted as Taylor Johnson in the New York Times, which I don't know what it says about our editorial standards, but as a link builder, right, in scrappy young days, you're like, oh yeah, hell yeah, New York Times links. And so there was a lot of examples of that, being able to get in some bigger websites, Pop Sugar, your Forbes, your Fortune magazines, like just again, tailoring, just bringing value and tailoring, and again, like being the expert in the area and making an interesting story around it.
Tell me more about that. This Taylor Johnson persona. Did you have like a LinkedIn profile for this person and a website and Twitter profile and all that stuff to make it look like a real person?
Oh yeah, this person, they were a writer on the website. They had a LinkedIn profile. They would comment. They had a picture, some stock photo that we tailored a little bit, and had a bit of a backstory. Had, I think, 3 or 4 kids. Just to legitimize them a little bit. Again, those are like what I loved about Taroko. It was like these just scrappy young expats just trying to, while on their adventures across the world, use SEO to help like feed that interest. And how do we keep learning? And it was this like nice little sort of scrappy think tank, if you will. Again, those practices now, would I put on a Taylor Johnson persona? Probably not, definitely not. But again, I just look back on those days and like, all right, we've just seen what sticks.
Yeah, for what it's worth, me and my co-founders have also done similar things. And it makes you question a lot about how the editorial process works. But now that you explain what Taroko software is, I actually think I was at a similar type of company, but instead of building software products, they built media publications. So they had a website about EB5 investors, and it was like the go-to reason. Do you know about the EB5 visa? It's like if you're a foreign national and you invest X $100,000 or $1 million in like a US business or infrastructure development, you get a green card. So lots of search volume on that. And I was writing a lot of articles about this EB5 visa. I was building links. And one of the tactics that we did was creating scholarships. And I would pitch those to universities and get .edu links, which were so good.
Oh, man.
I don't know if that's still a thing people do, but I got so many EDU links and our traffic was skyrocketing.
We had the exact same play. We had like we did the resume writing scholarship and, submit your resume written for a famous person or something like that. And yeah, we got tons of EDU links. And yeah, back in the day, at least those EDUs were gold. Mm-hmm. So that was amazing. But like outside of the link building side and those kind of crazy wins, I would say just generally in the early days, how we dominated the resume space was something I'm most proud of, like ranking number one for a period of time for the word resume and a lot of juicy terms like resume builder. I mean, you're on top of the world at that point. When we had weddingdresses.com, we, got to the first page of Google for wedding dresses, and you just feel like a king, like you own the world there. And that's what has kept me in SEO, is that like kind of dopamine hit when you take the ranking and it's like, I've done it.
That's funny. Like I've conquered this, like screw the competitors.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned this in passing, but you were saying how at Taroko Software is a bunch of expats trying to be scrappy and build these companies with SEO. And I think there are two ways we can take that. But I think the first place I'd like to start is, how did you get into SEO? Because that was your first SEO role.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, that was. And I always love that question because, of course, SEO's every path is different. We're not linear in getting to SEO. And so mine is definitely, I think, different in that I grew up just outside of DC. So, of course, politics is always in the air. I was like, oh, let me study political science, international affairs. Did that through college. Did an internship for a government affairs consulting firm, which is really just a nice way of saying a lobbyist. And did not enjoy my experience there at all. I was like, oh, is this where I want my future to be? On the hill. And so quickly I was like, I need to pivot. I was also studying Chinese at the time. So I did a summer abroad in Beijing, and that really kind of opened my wanderlust, if you will. It's like, how do I get back? And I wanted to continue learning Chinese as well and just exploring that side of the world. So a roommate of mine had a brother who had been teaching English in Taiwan, suggested it, recommended it. And I was like, all right, mom, dad, I just graduated and I'm moving across the world, which was a big, a bunch of hoopla and a lot of convincing required for my parents. But again, they trusted me, fortunately. And I went there saying, I'm just going to go there for a year, teach English. Then I'll come back. Now I'll have some better language. Maybe I'll do something, with the State Department and go that route. So I go over there, love my experience for the first year, and ended up staying there for 6 years. But I knew I did not want to continue teaching after 2 years. It wasn't going to be my career path. So I was like, how do I stay in Taiwan a little bit longer and keep this going? And it's like, all right, let me go to grad school, continue my international affairs track there. So I went to grad school there, and in order to pay for it, I was like, okay, not going to teach to pay for it. Let me see what's on Craigslist. Saw this, yeah, Craigslist.
Wait, no way.
Yes, that Craigslist was still a thing back then. It wasn't as raunchy as it is nowadays. But yeah, found it on Craigslist. I did not know what SEO was. Was like, all right, let me give this a shot. And the Taroko folks brought me on, and that started my SEO career, and then ended up, I think, 2 years finishing my master's degree. And I was like, by that time I had 2 years in the SEO industry, and I was enjoying that much more than writing academic papers. And I was like, well, I'm gonna stay in SEO, manage the team at Taroko. And yeah, after I think 6 years being in Taiwan, getting married in Taiwan, I decided it's time to move back to the States, being closer to my family. And yeah, that brought me back stateside.
Well, first, I also got that job I mentioned on Craigslist. I do wonder now if Craigslist is actually like the hidden gem for recruiting.
Yeah, that's the biggest tip out of this podcast. Yeah, check Craigslist for SEO jobs.
But that was also back in like 2014, 2015. So yeah. I'm sure it was a different Craigslist. I don't know what it's like. I haven't been on Craigslist in a while.
Me neither. But yeah, so many parallels between our careers.
Yeah.
Turns out.
Yeah. What did you learn about yourself during your time in Taiwan? Because it sounds like that was a pretty big move for you and your family. You were learning the language, which is impressive. Like my girlfriend's Chinese. I have not attempted to learn any Chinese yet, which, maybe I should. This is probably a sign from the universe that I should. But what did you learn about yourself during that period? Because it sounds like you were pretty scrappy through it all.
Yeah. Wow. What did I learn about myself? Man, what an introspective question. I mean, I think a lot, because those are the growing up, maturing days. And I was during that time not very mature, I would say, which, whatever. And you're 22, 23. I don't think most people are yet. But yeah, I think I learned a lot about not stagnating, I guess. And this has been something my dad is always like, one of the rules he's always told us is like, no matter what you're going to do, if you feel yourself stagnating, like you're not learning anymore, it's a sign to move on. And as long as like you're following sort of that mantra, usually you're going to turn out and on the right path. And so that's exactly what happened to me in Taiwan, where teaching English 2 years, yeah, it's doing great, I'm successful, but then I started plateauing. I didn't feel like I was learning or growing as a person. So yeah, it was time to change. And it was the same thing even at the end of Taroko while I was there, of like being able to recognize that you've seen things as far as they can go, and recognize that it is time for a shift. And that's basically been my rule throughout life. And anytime I have had a pivot, normally it is because those sensors are going off of like, all right, are you like really pressuring myself? Because sometimes you can get lazy and like, life is good, life is smooth, it's easy. But then there's always that voice in the back of my head. It's like, but what have you learned? Get off your ass here, read a book, do something. So that was the big thing to me, like really validating in that experience that this is one of the rules that I need to continue following, because it has worked so well. But yeah, I mean, I think I learned a lot about also just patience, being a manager of people for the first time while I was there. I think how to communicate as well is a big thing. Living in another country that, not everyone speaks English, and I had some Chinese, but I can't go deep into climate change or politics or anything with my Mandarin. So being able to effectively communicate on like a more like as basic level as possible and getting your messaging across, which I think kind of flows into marketing and how I think about that, of like just really stripping all the fluff and getting down to the core message and making sure that that's communicated simply and straightforward.
Yeah, I love it. And I abide by the same principle. It's the way I do it is I view myself, I mean, it's going to get a little bit morbid, but I think of myself like on my deathbed, and I'm like,
oh, wow.
Would I be happy with the decisions I make? Like, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's just for you personally, it's a very subjective question of if I don't do this decision or make this decision or do this thing, will I be sad that I didn't do it? And the answer is probably like usually yes. And that makes me decide, okay, I'm going to do this for my future self to not look back on this moment with regrets or wishing I did things differently. And worst case scenario is you can just go back to what you were doing anyway. So the risk is quite low in my mind. I think a lot of what I used to do in the past is I used to have a very high perception of risk, but the reality of it was lower than I perceived. So I had to kind of maybe I have to gaslight myself a little bit to view the risk profile a little differently, but reminding myself that like, hey, like I'm not going to die from this. It's the worst case scenario is really not that bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point about like, I think just facing, like being a little bit more honest with yourself or really challenging yourself. I think we forget to do that sometimes, whether it is because you're fearful of trying something new or doing something different. But like, I mean, your tactic is a great one that I've read before of like putting yourself in the future, like 2 years in the future, and looking back or asking your 2-year self of like, is this thing going to be like that impactful? Is it going to matter? Are you going to be thinking about it that much 2 years from now? Usually the answer is no. And it's like, all right, then I shouldn't be so worried to try this or, go out on a limb.
So you mentioned always learning and kind of hitting these moments of pivoting and maybe breaking through plateaus as I'm reading through the lines here. And the thing that's interesting to me is I rarely see people jump from consumer to enterprise or vice versa. And it seems like you really jumped from one end of the spectrum for SEO to the other, going from resume writing, targeting probably very young professionals to some of the more technical people in cloud security. So tell me about like that whole transition and what have you found to be different about enterprise SEO?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest transition between like what I was doing at Taroko and then moving into CrowdStrike was just, the product-led motion versus the sales motion. And of course, I had no experience going into CrowdStrike with the sales motion and the implications of that. Whereas I was much closer at Taroko of like, okay, we're getting people right into the product. You could see them going through the steps of the resume builder and whether or not they ended up purchasing. And then from there, kind of reverse engineering the things we needed to with the content or adding new content ideas to kind of, help improve that conversion rate. Whereas with the sales led motion, of course, that's a little bit more difficult. You need kind of that visibility. I wasn't at all, didn't know how to use tools like Salesforce or anything like Gong for the sales call. So that was like the biggest transition for me. And it was something that I don't feel like I really got a hang of actually until I came into Wiz. And again, kudos to them and that management of like, they have it like really tight around looking at the numbers and having the visibility into the data. Whereas I know at a lot of companies, sometimes the visibility into that can be tough. So that was one of the bigger transitions, I think, from consumer to enterprise. And of course, going to enterprise or like working in a bigger company, the other challenge is really like just doing the SEO fundamentals and building that process in a 1,000+ person company is a challenge in and of itself. Whereas maybe at Taroko, right, we were scrappier. We kind of controlled the whole website, so we could make changes more quickly. We didn't have to go through the whole like evangelization of SEO internally and then really selling these ideas. It was like, hey, let's try it. All right, next day we're throwing up a new CTA or something on the website or making a technical change. So yeah, that was the other big one. Although I've come to actually like the evangelization part of the job a little bit more and really selling.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I don't like because it forces you to like tell a story a little bit and selling that narrative. And I guess it's kind of grown on me to see that lightning bolt moment when you tell someone who knows nothing about SEO and they're like, oh, wow. And then they kind of light up even at some of the most basic things like, whoa, we're ranking on the first page for this keyword. That's amazing. And they really buy in. And then they're leaning into like, what else can we do to move the efforts forward? So I've enjoyed that part of it a lot more.
Yeah, it does remind me of my time at HubSpot where I forget how big Wiz is now, but I joined HubSpot at about 500 people. I left at about 4,000 or 5,000. So it definitely turned into a different company by the end of my time there. And I remember whenever I had a new project idea, I had to kind of do the roadshow of pitching it to different people and iterating on it, presenting it, and then eventually people hear about it. And then I would get that buy-in from one person and I'd say, hey, this person's in, like, what do you think of it? Like, this should be aligned with your objectives and all that. And had to do a little bit of that politicking, which was a really helpful skill to learn because, some people kind of need to hear that others are bought in, and you need to do that little dance and get folks interested and bought in. Otherwise you'll try to do the thing and then you'll hit roadblocks everywhere.
I would put that politicking skill above any of like advanced SEO practices or skills that you're trying to learn like that, because you're not going to be able to do any of that advanced stuff, especially at least not in an enterprise, unless you, one, established the basics and the foundation and bought the trust internally, but then are able to sell those larger ideas. And if you can't sell the idea and tie it, especially for, in Wiz's case, to the business, to the bottom line, it's not going to get off the ground. So there's another pro tip for people applying to SEO jobs. It's like, how are you connecting SEO to the business, and how, like, coming to interviews, having at least one example of an idea that you were able to sell to the larger business.
Yeah. And there is a lot, as we mentioned, happening in the SEO world right now on those two fronts of optimizing to appear in LLM outputs and also figuring out how to use AI to augment the work that we do. I mean, I don't know if everyone would admit this, but there is a lot of SEO work that is pretty tedious and repetitive that I believe should be automated, and set up some, monitoring so that you don't have to be doing these manual analyses. But how are you thinking about these things? Right. I feel like I'm the one interviewing a candidate now, because this is probably the exact question you asked.
Set up now.
But how do you think about it?
That's So we're, again, thinking the two tracks. I think one, the LLM visibility side. Obviously, that's something we're testing now. We're speaking with different vendors that, of course, those vendors are blowing up all over the place with these LLM visibility. So anyone that comes, we definitely have a conversation with, just to see what they're doing, because it's such a new space. But yeah, we use some of those tools. At first, it was just about visibility, seeing like, okay, how do we show up? And more recently, we've been doing these little mini tests of like, okay, how do we influence our citation share in a particular topic? Yeah. And I think we discussed this kind of earlier. We mentioned it, of like, this is where you start to see the SEO, AEO parallels line up. And I've come away feeling like this is sort of feels unsophisticated, as much as like we want to make this, oh my gosh, it's a whole new landscape. It's kind of like, no, it's a lot of the same. One example, for instance, if we're looking at like bottom of funnel prompts and getting more citation share there. Well, if you look at this current citation share, you're going to see a lot of your typical solution roundups, top 10 listicles from our commercial competitors. And for us at Wiz, that was a strategy that we just did not go into, just for your kind of all the common reasons why you wouldn't do one of those listicles, whether like the quality problem, bringing competitors up to your level, does it really get people to buy in or take a demo? So that's not something we were entertaining, at least not early on in our strategy. But then you're looking at the citation share, like we've got direct competitors that have dozens of these things, and they are just taking all of the share. So, all right, let's give that a try. And yeah, of course, as soon as we start publishing these solution roundups on our own site, within 2 days, they get picked up, and you see that citation share jump up as well. And it's the same thing with like your content refreshes or re-ops that you would do for SEO. We found we've done some of those. And again, within about 2 days, it gets picked up and showing up in more prompts. So that's a little bit from the LLM visibility side. Now we want to kind of scale those tests and see like, all right, let's see if we can take over entire product pillar topic. So that's what we're doing now there. The other lane of this, right, is how do we apply it to our own workflows or use cases? And that's where, I mean, I don't know that we've even scratched the surface, but there's a lot of just, I think, simple things like, well, not simple necessarily, but like brief creation, for instance. We have a pretty large content program, a lot of net new posts every month, which means they all need a brief. And again, in the cloud security or any technical space, we can't just like throw up any odd brief. And for us, we want to talk about like, how do we add proprietary data or the Wiz philosophy into those briefs? So yeah, we've been testing brief creation. We've been testing like CTA creation or promotion. For instance, like if we create the state of code report at Wiz, okay, how do we go about promoting that report across all of our code security posts, which we probably have 100 plus right now. And so it's a really easy way where you feed it the report, you tell it, hey, I want a unique, like tie the report specifically to this article topic, pull out any, stats, like juicy, enticing stats that will get users to kind of click on that CTA and download the report.
Mm-hmm.
And there you go. You've got your full list there of like unique CTAs, which are also enriching the content because you're adding some of that proprietary data that is just so hard to get nowadays.
Yeah, that's fascinating. We're doing similar things on the brief creation side. I think it's interesting because I remember maybe a year or two ago, people were kind of shitting on listicles because it's not the most interesting thing to write.
It's easy to shit on,
but it was working for SEO, and it's also working for optimizing for LLM outputs. And we ran a similar test for our own company where we wanted to appear for these people looking for GEO agencies or AEO. We said, hey, let's write our listicle. And lo and behold, we appeared in the LLM outputs. And we're kind of using that as a data point because similar to you all earlier on, we had a client who was very adamantly against listicles and mentioning competitors, challenges with legal teams and all that stuff. Totally valid.
Of course.
But now they're asking, hey, how do we appear in these LLM outputs? And they kind of need to face the music that, hey, look at all the pages being cited. It's all top 10 XYZ products.
Exactly.
And so it's more and more the data saying, it's pretty rudimentary. I don't know if it'll always be like this, but at least right now, it seems like that's the arbitrage opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think it's worth mentioning though with this, it's like, I think people maybe are too quick to like, all right, let's just jump into LLM visibility where if you look at the actual traffic coming so far from these, it's minuscule in terms of the Google traffic, even as that continues to dip. So that's another thing where we kind of have to temper ourselves, as exciting as it is. Like, oh yeah, we can change citation share, but if the traffic is still not there, and more importantly, like conversions aren't there, we're not going to just like throw everything into that bucket just yet.
That's kind of my fear in all this is there's a lot of uncertainty right now. And I know folks are looking for certainty. And even from my conversations, this isn't just a conversation that SEOs and marketers are having.
Oh, yeah.
Like VCs are talking about this. CEOs are asking about this, right? It's kind of a weird thing where all of a sudden there's this interest in SEO and AI optimization and all of that. And there are a lot of folks speaking uncertainties, but when you look at the raw numbers, even on our end, I mean, LLM traffic is in the hundreds, organic traffic is in the tens of thousands.
Exactly.
So, yes, it's up and to the right, but of course it's up and to the right. It started from zero and these tools are just getting adopted. So yeah, if as adoption increases, we should expect this to increase. But even if you don't do anything different, you'll probably see that increasing a little bit. But the absolute numbers, you're right, aren't something that are very exciting yet. But that isn't to say we shouldn't be experimenting.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, going back to what we said earlier, it's so important to be looking at the data and experimenting now. So at least you have those data points that you can go to the CMO or your manager like, yes, LLM is important. I understand we need to invest in it, but here's the traffic difference. Here's the conversion difference. Like we can't just run away from traditional SEO. And if you're not doing that research and looking day in, day out at it, then you're not going to be armed with those data points to help back up your story.
Yeah. And what I'm curious about too is like the second order consequence of if there's more zero click searches, whether it's AI mode or LLMs. And, I'm glad we're moving away from traffic being the success metric and maybe people will more value the traffic more. My hunch is there's going to be more emphasis on, okay, we're losing traffic, but the traffic we're getting is probably more relevant. So how do we improve our conversion rate? And I wonder if there's going to be more of an emphasis on that. Like, I'm curious what you guys are seeing on your end. Like, have you been hit hard by like AI overviews and all of that, or how are you revisiting how you think about that?
Yeah, that's been one of our core focuses now at Wiz, is just that it's like focusing on conversion rates across the board and not. I mean, we haven't traffic has always been a leading indicator for us, but not like the core metric.
Yeah.
And we've been fortunate where AIOs haven't just completely destroyed us. Like, been a little bit of a dip there, but this is where I don't know, maybe it's a cybersecurity related phenomenon, but I wonder if like the AI, like a lot of these AIOs, the content in there is really serving the intent. And I think in many cases, people still need to click in some of the search results, and that's not always the case. But
Yeah.
like if I'm searching, I'm an SEO SaaS buyer, right? But I'm searching now AEO, and I want to learn about that and how I should think about it. The AI overview is not going to help me in that case, right? And I'm going to be looking for the brands in the search results that are actually thinking about AEO. What do they have to say? Do they have a product in terms of like AIO visibility or optimization? And what are their philosophies? And that's a top of funnel search still. If I'm typing just answer engine optimization, which of course everyone now is saying the depth of tofu content. I don't think it's the case. I understand why. Of course, you're going to see less clicks from those, but those clicks probably weren't valuable anyways if they're being satisfied by just a definition sentence and some bland benefits about X, Y, and Z. You weren't going to convert anyways, which goes back to the original point of like, that's why we're just ultra focused on conversions now, because we're still going to get traffic to that tofu content. And for us, it's more about what are the right offers based on product pillars or topics that are going to get them into the funnel. So we're really focused on templates, playbooks, calculators, tools, that type of stuff, which is a little bit more evergreen and can also be used in other digital channels.
I just had this funny thought. I've joked around with a couple peers where, like, I wonder how much of the keyword search volume for a given keyword is just SEOs doing research on the SERP analysis and checking their rankings. And I wonder for these prompts, I wonder if a lot of the volume is people trying to optimize and see where the company appears. So they just keep prompting these things.
That's right. No, we're driving our volume.
Kind of a weird circular thing. But it's such an interesting time for SEO because this is the first time that there's been so much change, right? Like we've had algorithm shifts, but
huge.
I'd say there weren't that many big changes with the algorithm changes. You kind of had the same fundamentals, but seems like some of those are changing a little bit. Honestly, there's sometimes, I'm curious how you feel, but like sometimes it's a little overwhelming how much is announced day to day. Not even like just week to week or month to month, but maybe sometimes on an hour. What motivates you to keep evolving in SEO and content, like when it's changing so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think it ties in well with that mantra from my dad of like, don't plateau. And it's like now the perfect use case here of like, all right, now SEO is really evolving and it's a little bit more exciting because it feels a little bit more like those wild, wild west days of the early SEO where now everyone again is kind of just like experimenting with things. Like you said, there's so much noise out there of like these black hack tactics and whatnot that you can try to do to game the system. So it's kind of, I don't know, it brings me back to those early days, which excites me again, because it feels like it's leveling the playing field in some ways. In others, maybe not. But I guess that's what keeps me motivated is like, all right, now it's something new to learn. I don't feel like SEO is certainly going to die or our jobs are in jeopardy, but it is going to be changing where more and more CMOs are going to be forced to discuss LLM visibility. What are we doing there? So again, to put yourself in the best position, got to be experimenting now and at least just collecting the data so you can put yourself out there to be like, yes, I am equipped to be thinking or at least transitioning an SEO team into more like LLM visibility.
Yeah, I love it. We have a similar approach where, hey, we can either be scared and scrambling or this can be an exciting thing. Like, yeah, a lot is changing, but I mean, the best way to approach it is to be optimistic and believe that we can figure it out and kind of ride this wave. And we abide by this barbell approach where, 80% is pretty straightforward. We know what we're doing, a lot more certainty. And then the 20% is our experimental bucket of what are the things we want to learn to try out that might not work, but we want to test out. Otherwise, we wouldn't continue to innovate. So it sounds like you're doing something similar.
And it's not that crazy sophisticated. You don't need to have this wild test and it's like some basic data points, right? Check your GA4, have set a dashboard for just LLM traffic, monitor that every day. Use your basic LM visibility tool, publish one or two posts that maybe you wouldn't have for just traditional SEO, and start monitoring that, like doing these little tiny tests. And once one of those hits, right, you get that SEO dopamine hit where again, I'm the king. Oh, I can own the citation share. And then that's only going to motivate you to do more. And that's going to be kind of like what continues to pull you in. And it's going to start to feel like a natural motion that you're doing every day.
Yeah, just chasing the next dopamine hit. So what do you wish more people, and maybe we can focus on founders, CEOs, CMOs. What do you hope that more of them understand about SEO and AI right now amongst all the noise? Are there any words of comfort or advice you can give them?
Oh, founders, SEOs. I'm trying to think in my own perspective, like to my CMO, but I'm a little bit more fortunate where I have the buy-in and the trust there. So it's a little bit of easier sell there.
What were the things you thought you had to sell your CMO on?
I don't know. Kind of you caught me on a good one here, because in my case, like, so the way it was presented to us, of course, is like, okay, now the board is thinking about LLM visibilities. What are we doing for AI? And fortunately, we already had like the use case side of the house underway. We were already applying it to the use cases. But for us, it was just about getting the visibility first to understand what really is the landscape here. Like how much, what is your existing citation share? Trying to understand over a few months, when you start publishing content, how quickly are LLMs picking up the content? Where are they being cited, and for what types of prompts? And then doing those like little tests. But yeah, I don't know if there's any, like, it wasn't approached to me as like fear-based. It was more of like, this is the next frontier. What do we need to do to make sure we're in the best position to be ahead of the competitors when this starts to really ramp up? So it was more of a fact-finding mission for us of like, where are we at visibility-wise, and then how can we influence that visibility? And that's what brings us back to like those solution roundups, doing more tailored re-ops. I mean, there's areas too where like traditionally we wouldn't cover like XYZ tool benefits post, because that's already baked in your what is XYZ tool post. But we kept seeing these other either competitors or just other sites showing up for like XYZ tool benefits. I'm like, all right, fine, we'll just create that. and then because we normally wouldn't, and then we went in there, we created it. It was the second most cited page within like that product pillar in LLMs. I'm like, oh shit, okay, so yeah, there you go. So yeah, I didn't answer your question great, because I guess in my perspective was more like there's this positive vibe around it, like explorations versus like, oh my God, the world is crashing. What can we do?
Yeah. I know you said you don't think it was a good answer. I think it was a great answer. I mean, start with measuring, getting visibility. And if they don't have tooling in place, start with that. Otherwise, you're kind of shooting in the dark, and then figure out what's getting cited. Try it out yourself, like produce this type of content being cited. And sounds like in your case, it worked out pretty wonderfully
so far.
Yeah, I'd say that's great advice that we're trying to get our clients to do as well.
And I mean, on the AIO side, which I think a lot of people are focused on specifically, like obviously you can see the traffic going down. I think it's just also measuring, okay, well, are conversions also falling, right? Is pipeline falling with it? And hopefully it's not. I know in our case, it's not, which is again why we're just maybe more fortunate in cybersecurity, where we're maintaining clicks and conversions. But that's where you should be focusing and kind of changing the story of like, are we bringing content that's valuable, right? And that maybe also has applications beyond just SEO and LLM. That's what at Wiz, we're fortunate with the buy-in that we have and the budget that we have, is we're able to create content that we apply outside of just your traditional SEO and LLM. I'm thinking of like a lot of gated security cheat sheets. I mentioned like calculators, assessments, and things like that. That again, even if traffic's going down, we can still say like, one, conversions are rising, and it's had applications, in paid social or email as well.
Yeah. Erik, we covered a lot in this conversation. Resume tips, some gray hat, maybe potentially black hat SEO tactics from the past, Craigslist for recruiting, AI. I really appreciate you making time to join me for the show, and really excited for folks to get to learn from you.
Thank you for having me and helping me scratch my podcast itch. I've always wanted to do one. Hopefully opportunities to do more here in the future. And if you guys need more, I've got lots of resume tips, professional profiles versus career objectives. Come at me.
Sounds good. Thanks, Erik.
All right. Thank you.